when you look back to signing day last season in 2025, the big name on the marquee, the big headliner, of course, was Dorian Moore, the wide receiver out of Duncanville, Texas. Of course, that flipped on July 4th of last year and ended up signing with the Ducks. But when you look, I think, a little bit deeper to that maybe second group of names in the marquee and really the position group, the headliner of this class that I think really vaulted it to that top 5 ranking that it ended up with was this defensive back group. They took not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 players that were top 80 overall in the country that were all a part of the secondary. 3 corners and 1 safety last year. Of course, it was led by Naeem Offord, the signing day flip out of Alabama, the top player out of the state of Alabama. He was the number 12 overall player overall according to the industry. You have Trey McNutt, safety out of the state of Ohio, the number 26 overall player. Brandon Finney coming out of DMV right there at number 58. Dorian Brew at number 79. Like, you look at that class from last season and you think like, oh man, this is a haul. This is the building block for the future of what Oregon's secondary is truly going to be. These are all really good to great players, elite level players that can play at least a couple of years for the Oregon Ducks in this rotation consistently. And then you look forward to 2026 and you'd be like, well, yeah, I don't think we're going to take as many players in the secondary as we did last year. That's maybe the initial thought. That's maybe the initial conversation. But au contraire, because the no-fly zone is being built. And when you look now at 2026 in this class, because things are starting to shape up a little bit, they're starting to get a little bit more clear. You know who some of the leaders are when you get into this official visit season. Official visits are being scheduled. Commitment dates are being set. And I don't need to talk about, again, how Dan is focused on this season, on really dominating in the summer and getting these commitments. But Oregon is in play for 5 defensive backs in the 2026 class that are all in the top 50 in the country overall, according to the industry. So if you're expecting this thing to maybe slow down a little bit, you may be severely disappointed when you talk about secondary recruiting, because I think it's starting to be established that Oregon is a place that people can look to, both high school. We're going to talk obviously more about high school recruiting than this segment, but also transfers can look to and say, that's where I can turn into an NFL draft pick in the defensive backfield, no doubt. Tosh Lapoy, Dan Lanning, Rashad Wadood, Chris Hampton, they are really starting to build something and starting to build a significant future. We're going to talk about what this future secondary might look like a little bit later on, certainly in the secondary. But when you look at these guys in 2026, I feel confident. There's 5, and I'm going to kind of break these guys down, but I feel really good about Oregon ending up maybe with 3. I feel really good about 2, but I think there's a good possibility that the Ducks could have 3 of these guys sign on the dotted line when all is said and done. And 7 blue chip secondary players in back-to-back years, yeah, that will establish yourself as one of the top secondary destinations in all of college football. Look, I've talked about Brandon Arrington at least a couple of times on this show, and for good reason. In last week's show, he was one of my top 5 priority commitments going forward for the Oregon Ducks right now. Like 6'2.5", 180 pounds. I posted I quote tweeted one of Brandon's tweets on Twitter with him and his wingspan sprawled out. I'm like, is that a corner or is that a freaking pterodactyl? Because when you combine his height, when you combine his length and speed, if you've been watching TSOW, you've seen a Chris Hampton soundbite where he talks about the traits, height, length, speed, as those types of traits that Oregon is looking to in terms of talent acquisition to bring in the secondary. But Brandon is, I've talked about him before. I'm not going to talk about him as much. I love the guy. I want him to be an Oregon Duck so bad. And I think there's a lot of people out there in the Duck fan base that want him to be a Duck really bad. He's number 9 player in the country, according to the On3 industry right now. The good thing about the Ducks right now, they hold the last visit for Brandon on June 20th before his set July 5th commitment date. I love having the last visit. I love when he's able to kind of go out and see some of these other schools, and then he's going to have all of that in the back of his mind, and he's comparing it to what Oregon does, and we know Oregon can certainly pull out all the stops when it comes to these official visits. And then when you go into the bunker with your family, what's the last thing you're thinking about? You're thinking about the last school that you visited. What's most recent? And in this case with Brandon, that's going to be the University of Oregon right now. Texas A&M was really setting the pace with his recruitment last year, but Oregon's gotten into this thing. Of course, the track and field connection. He's a stud in the 100-meter, 200-meter, a state championship type of guy in the state of California. USC is going to be in there. The weird thing about USC, they've taken a lot of really good corners in this class, like R.J. Sermons and Albert Hill as just a couple of names they've taken. They're going to get to a point, I think, pretty soon where if they take more of these high-level defensive backs, they could see some decommitments on the back end. We already saw it with Xavier Griffin out there at linebacker for them. They're taking a little bit of a different strategy with their recruiting right now. But let's move on to some of these other players in this 26 class that I have not talked about yet, and I think right now in this segment is the perfect opportunity to talk about him. Let's talk about Jett Washington. Coming out of one of the premier high schools in the West, that's Bishop Gorman down there in Las Vegas. They produce really good players on a year-by-year basis. When you look at Jett, he's the number 26 overall player according to the industry, 6'4.5", 200 pounds. Steve Wiltfong considers Oregon as one of the favorites right now. When I look at Jett, there's maybe a reason why Jett is his name. He's got fantastic straight line speed, fantastic straight line acceleration, fantastic straight line anticipation. It is elite. You put on his film from Bishop Gorman and you jump out of your seat a little bit. It's like that guy is shot out of a freaking cannon. He's a 747. He's an airliner when getting from point A to point B. That's what I really love right now about Jett. And he plays the ball like a wide receiver right now. So he's got those types of ball skills that you look for from that safety position where in the deep third, you can go up and you can make a play in a jump ball situation, even against a bigger type of wide receiver. Like we know Kingston Lopa on this year's team, he's kind of that 6'4", that 6'5" range. There's a couple of safeties right here on this list that have the type of height that I think we're going to see from Kingston Lopa and Jett Washington. Like when I look at all five of these guys, Jett is certainly towards the top of the list of guys that I feel very confident that Oregon is going to be able to close the deal on. Davon Benjamin, like if Jett is at the top of that list, I think Davon is really close, coming out of Thousand Oaks in California. Oregon is considered the leader here. He's yet to schedule some official visits. Steve Wiltfong has already RPM predicted him to land at Oregon. Now, he's a smaller stature when you take a look at all these guys. 5'11", 165. A good amount of his highlight tape is actually on offense, where he's kind of working out of the slot on offense. He's very quick movements, very twitchy. And when I kind of look at what his tape looks on offense, and I kind of like sometimes when defensive backs, high-level defensive backs in high school also play wide receiver. They also learn that side of the ball, so maybe they can anticipate some things in some of these route trees and these route combinations. But when I look at Davon and I look at his stature and I look at, maybe some of these other guys that are a little bit longer, that are a little bit taller, that are maybe a little bit faster, the recovery speed maybe is a little bit better right now. I look at Davon and I'm like, maybe he's a guy that could fit in at the star position. Maybe he's someone post Dalen Austin that could really be in that slot corner, in that nickel type of spot in Oregon's defense. Because I think he's got that twitchy quickness to be able to keep up with the twitchy quickness from slot receivers on the offensive side of the football as well. So he's one guy I think that brings a little bit of a different skill set, a little bit of a different, smaller size and stature compared to some of these other guys that I'm going to be talking about. Now, those are the guys that I feel really good about. Now, these are guys that I think are going to be a little bit more of a battle, maybe a little bit more of a reach. Let's talk about Jireh Edwards coming out of DMV. 6'1.5", 205 pounds. Now, he's in that DMV area. He's in that Baltimore area. We've seen Oregon start to form a little bit of a pipeline over to that area. Ife Obadegwu came out of that area. Brandon Finney came out of that area. Not a defensive back, but they're trying to get Emmanuel Iheanacho at offensive tackle out of that area as well. Jireh has an official visit scheduled for June 20th. It's the final visit of 6 visits. So Jireh and Brandon Arrington both have a June 20th visit, and it's both the final visit in their list of visits right now. So that's extremely encouraging, I think, for both of those guys right now. He's a 5-star on 24/7 and Rivals. He's an extremely physical player. Like, when I kind of look at all of the different skill sets of these 5 defensive backs right now, Jireh is certainly the player that on film, he really emphasizes on the highlights that are put out on these recruiting services, that it really shows, it's trying to show coaches and teams like, hey, I can be physical, I can play near the line of scrimmage, I can be that type of player, almost like a safety, like linebacker type of crossover. I mean, at 205, he would need to put on a lot more weight, I think, to be a linebacker, but he's got that type of skill set. That's more of that hard-hitting, play-the-run type of skill set over there. He can certainly play the pass really well. He's a 5-star safety, certainly for a reason. The last one is maybe a little bit of the late riser and the late bloomer within this class, and that's Joey O'Brien, sitting at number 41 overall right now, 6'4", 180 pounds. He really had a breakout performance at the OT7 7-on-7 fairly recently. He's got an official visit locked into Oregon for June 6th. Now, he's going to be compared a lot in this class to Jett Washington, right? They're both, 6'4", 6'5", those taller athletic safeties certainly back there. He's probably not as fast as Jett. I talked about that speed, that anticipation, getting from point A to point B, reading the ball, get into that spot. But he's got just as good as ball skills, I think. He plays wide receiver. There's a good amount on his highlight tape where he's playing wide receiver in the state of Pennsylvania. And I've talked about why I kind of like that as well. Like, he's got that ability to go up and play the ball certainly really well. Notre Dame and Penn State, I think, are going to be very tough to fend off right now for Joey OB, but it will certainly be very interesting to see how that plays out. It is very clear that the Ducks are building a no-fly zone in the secondary, and this has become a point of significant emphasis, and you're really seeing what I think the ideal image is for a Dan Lanning, Tosh Lapoy type of defense, where they have a stout, big, great pass rushing defensive line that can get after the quarterback, and then you have secondaries that can also help out that pass rush to be able to get home, where they can lock guys down. They're long, they're tall, they're athletic, they've got great recovery speed. Like, I think that's the type of formula that Tosh and Dan are trying to put together to really form at Oregon, and I love absolutely all of it. Now, let's talk about the future here for a minute and this secondary. Like, when I looked at what this thing could be in 2026, what this thing could be in 2027, it is utter madness. It is ridiculousness. Remember that show on MTV? Like, 2025 in so many different ways is building the bridge to like 2026 and beyond. There's a lot of youth that's been talked about ad nauseum. There's a lot of youth back there in that secondary. Like, a potential 2026 secondary could see a second-year starter, redshirt sophomore edition of Ife Obadegwu. You could see a second-year starter of Dalen Austin, also a redshirt sophomore at that point in time. You could see a second-year starter of Kingston Lopa. I think he'd be a true junior at that point in time. And then Trey McNutt and Naeem Offord, their second year in the program, maybe first-year starters. Like, that is a really good secondary. You move on to 2027, close your eyes and try to dream. Did not think I'd be singing during this segment, but you could possibly have a second-year starter in Naeem Offord. You could have a second-year starter in Trey McNutt. You could have a first-year starter, second year in the program, redshirt freshman or sophomore in Brandon Arrington. Same with Jett Washington as well. And you still got Dorian Brew out there who'd be a junior. You still got Brandon Finney out there who'd be a junior. Nowhere in here, as I mentioned, Aaron Flowers, and I think he could certainly fill in to maybe one of these roles as well. Like, the talent is so insanely deep at secondary compared to any other position on the field. It's provides a very optimistic future. And when you look at how the Ducks have bowed out these past 2 seasons, this was a necessity where if they want to get to that level, they want to be able to go on a playoff run and win a national championship. It's been proven that they check a lot of other boxes, but they needed to get better at the secondary. Yeah, I think 2025 and what could be in this 2026 recruiting class, yeah, I think they're getting better in the secondary.